Welcome everyone to our first citywide master plan public meeting. We're very excited to begin the master planning process. The master plan is we call it Imagine Nashua because we want you all to think about what you would like for our city, for our community. And since we have not done a master plan for 20 years, this is a great opportunity to take a new look, a fresh look at the city and decide in what direction we would really like to take the city. Now, we know that many of our neighborhoods are well established and there really aren't going to be many changes. We have a lot of residential neighborhoods, Broad Street, the South End, elsewhere, where really we're not going to see significant, you're not going to want to change those neighborhoods, I don't expect. But we have also areas of the city where we know there will be redevelopment, there will be changes, there already have been changes. The downtown, certainly, you've seen many changes take place, and we want you to think about how the downtown should evolve. Certainly some of our inner city neighborhoods, Tree Streets, maybe French Hill, other neighborhoods, as well as the south end of Nashua, Amherst Street, where we have significant commercial development, but still some opportunities or parcels that could be developed in the future. We want you to look at those and think about how we want our community to grow, how we want it to develop. We also have one very significant parcel, which I believe we will look at specifically, which is the Daniel Webster College campus, purchased by a gentleman from China who has not yet done anything with that parcel. We know that certainly there's a lot of land there, buildings that are a little dated and asbestos, some of them, but we want to think about how that parcel could be, how that property could be used to the benefit of our community. Now, we, of course, greatly appreciate your involvement because we want this to be a citizen effort. We want to get as many people involved as we possibly can. So thank you again for your participation. In order to help bring more Nashua residents, Nashuans in, we have decided to, we established a steering committee made up of Nashua residents from each ward and also other people on the committee. Again, we want this to be a citizen-guided, citizen-led effort. And so I want to introduce you to the chair of the Citizen Advisory Board, and that is Amber Logue, who is a young woman who lives in French Hill or near French Hill in a historic house, very interested, very involved in the community. And with her, there are a number of other people that have been nominated, I nominated, and they were confirmed by the Board of Aldermen. Before I turn it over to Amber, I should mention that we've been looking forward to this for a couple of years. We set aside the money. We thought we would start a little earlier than now, and of course that this would be a live meeting as well as all the meetings would be in-person meetings as we've always done in the past. COVID intervened, and so we are trying to do the best we can remotely through the Zoom link. And again, we really appreciate your coming on and showing your interest in Nashua. It's a great city, and I just am so happy and honored that we have many people who are interested in bettering our community. So with that, I will turn it over to Amber, who I will introduce. Amber, are you on?
I'm here.
And there is Amber. Amber Logue is the chair of the committee, and she will conduct the meeting from here on in.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Welcome everyone to Imagine Nashua. Thank you for joining us for this kickoff meeting. As Mayor said, we wish it was in person. Unfortunately, it could not be, but we are excited that you're all here and you took the time out of your evening to spend some time with us. As he said, I'm Amber Logue, chair of the 2020 Master Plan Committee. This is your committee And it is a dedicated, diverse group of individuals, like you said, representation from each one of our 9 wards. It's an honor to serve with them, and we are each honored and so excited to be a part of Imagine Nashua with a focus on equity, resilience, and climate protection as we look forward to the future. So a few housekeeping items, just as some of us have vast experience with Zoom, feels like we're on it all day, while some may be new. So we do want to keep a learning mindset. It is a new platform. Everybody does have different level of exposure. Please keep your video off. This will help us to reduce the strain on the city's bandwidth. If you don't know how to do that, it's bottom left corner. You can see video and click that for off. You also do want to keep yourself on mute. You are all muted right now, I believe. We do want everyone to be able to participate. We just want to do it through a facilitated way. As you can imagine, we want to make sure that we can hear others when they are speaking. So when you do speak, please identify yourself, your name, and if applicable, how you are involved, if you're somebody that is on the committee, a stakeholder, etc. Only one person to speak at a time. Now you are probably wondering, when do I speak and how? Live questions will be answered at the end of the presentation. You can also put your questions in the chat. We have several people monitoring the chat right now and throughout the evening that will answer those questions and try to answer those in real time if applicable. If we do, or it may also be held for the end. Now, when we do get to live questions, you want to use the raise hand feature that will help us to make sure that we can go through and call in everyone. During the presentation, like I said, put your questions in the chat box. And then for those of you who know somebody that was unable to make it this evening, or if you do have to hop off early, that's quite all right. The video and presentation will be on the website by Monday. And that website is imagine.nashuanh.gov. I will also put that in the chat for everyone. I do want to introduce, and we're pleased to have with us, our city staff, which is Sarah Marchant. Hi, Sarah. Matt Sullivan and Julie Chismus. Hi, everyone. Give us a little wave. We also want to introduce to you the UTIL team. That is Tim Love. I hope I say this right, Elizabeth. Elizabeth Vanderels.
Yep, that's right. Hi, everyone.
Yes, I practiced all day. Will Cohen.
Hi there.
And Taskina Tareen. We're going to get to know them pretty well here over the next hour or so. And Taskina, you're going to take over from here. Welcome.
Thank you. Hello again, everyone. Welcome to the official Imagine Nashua public kickoff meeting. I want to thank you all again for taking time to be here today. We are UTIL, the leading consultant team for this process, and we are very excited to work closely with you all. There are a few items that we'll be going over today. We'll start by introducing the larger Imagine Nashua team, and then go over the plan overview and timeline. We will also discuss ways in which each of you can be involved in this process. Then we'll share a snapshot of existing conditions and trends in Nashua today before introducing the first public survey, which we encourage all of you to take part in. It's already posted on the master plan website. Next slide. So this is the Imagine Nashua team. I'm just going to briefly reintroduce myself. I am Taskina Tareen. I am an urban planner and urban designer at UTIL, an architecture and urban planning firm based in downtown Boston. I'm here today with my colleagues, Tim Love, who is the principal in charge at UTIL, Will Cohen, who is an urban planner and also the project manager at Imagine Nashua, Elizabeth Vanderels, who is also an urban planner specializing in environmental and transportation planning. As I said, we are leading the consultant team. We'll be working very closely with internal city staff, as well as a great group of steering committee members representing various wards and organizations across the city. UTIL has worked on numerous city plans across the state of Massachusetts, and we are beyond excited to work on our first city plan in the state of New Hampshire. Our team also includes some amazing sub-consultants, each of whom will bring their own expertise across different topic areas. We are working with Ninnigat Partners and Viva Consulting, who are our economic development experts, Brown, Richardson, Rowe, and Horsley Witten, who are our site engineering infrastructure experts, and also Tool Design, who will be helping us with issues related to transportation and mobility. Next slide. So I will briefly go over an overview of the planning process and the timeline for Imagine Nashua. So what is Imagine Nashua? So this is a citywide planning process. It will combine comprehensive community engagement with other major planning efforts pursued in the past 20 years in order to create a sustainable and innovative future for the city of Nashua. You may be asking, what is a master plan and what does it accomplish? So as I mentioned, this is a comprehensive citywide master plan. It is a long-range plan that's focused on land use policies, outlining a vision for the future of Nashua with clear strategies and tactics to guide future decision-making and programs across the city. This will be a very collaborative process. It will engage inclusive wide city discussions with voices who aren't always at the table in order to achieve a more well-rounded perspective on key policy decisions. I also want to emphasize that Imagine Nashua will be focusing on equity, resilience, and climate protection as overarching principles, and I'll go into this a bit later. Why are we doing this planning process now? The previous master plan was completed in the year 2000. Since then, a number of topic and area-focused efforts have been undertaken. Now is an important time, 20 years on, to assess where we left off since the last master plan, the changes that have occurred, and where we are today as a city and community. This is also an important opportunity to take stock of overarching goals and vision for the city today and for the next generation, and to provide a consistent guide for long-term planning in the city. So how does Imagine Nashua relate to other citywide planning efforts? The city has undertaken several planning efforts since 2000. Some of the more recent planning efforts are listed here, from the Nashua Riverfront Development Plan to hazard mitigation plans to enhancing the city's bicycle and pedestrian network. Imagine Nashua and this comprehensive planning process will bring all these individual efforts, including also regional efforts, together into one comprehensive vision guiding future policy and growth in the city. There are numerous positive outcomes that can come out of this process. If you look to your right, in the 2000 master plan, conserving natural resources and open space was a high priority. At that time, the city had 230 acres of conserved land, and as of 2017, there's over 1,000 acres of permanently conserved land. Promoting sidewalks and trails was also another high priority of the 2000 master plan. Since then, the city has added over 4 miles of conservation trails for the community to enjoy. So this process can have direct positive impact for the future of the city. What is the timeline of Imagine Nashua? This will be a year-long process, which sounds long, but is actually a tight process with a lot of activity packed, and it's very important that each and every one of you are actively engaged throughout this process. Next slide. So what drives this plan? The state of New Hampshire requires all citywide plans to have an overarching vision statement guiding the comprehensive plan. We will work together with you all throughout the engagement process to craft this vision. But as a beginning platform, the city would like to focus on equity, resilience, and climate protection. These principles will be woven throughout the plan and used as a lens through which the plan is implemented and evaluated. When we speak about equity, we're talking about fairness. And to quote Cynthia Silver Parker, an advocate for social justice, equity doesn't necessarily mean, it's not necessarily about everyone getting the same thing, but it's about everyone getting what they need in order to improve the quality of their situation. When we talk about resilience, we're talking about the city being prepared to adapt in the face of change, whether that change is social, environmental, economic, or health related. When we speak about climate protection, we're talking about preparing the city for future climate hazards and also building on current efforts to mitigate our impact on the environment. So what topic areas will be addressed in Imagine Nashua? In addition to the vision statement, the state of New Hampshire also requires every citywide plan to have a topic area focused on land use and development. This includes the proposed location, intensity, and extent and intensity of future land use in the city. Imagine Nashua will also look at other topics. We will be focusing on housing, assessing local housing needs and projections of future housing needs for all residents in the city. We will look at mobility and transit and access, providing adequate local transportation needs that are coordinated with regional and state transportation plans, and looking at ways to improve the mobility network to enhance access for all Nashua resident workers. We'll be looking at open space and natural resources, continuing to protect critical natural areas and also preserving and expanding access to open space and recreational areas for all Nashua communities. We will be looking at economic growth, ways in which we can support Nashua's economic goals given its current economic strengths and weaknesses in the region, as well as supporting growth in both established and emerging industries. And finally, we'll be looking at arts and culture, a vital aspect of every community. Imagine Nashua will identify ways to protect cultural and historic resources, as well as leverage arts and cultural industry to support economic growth in the city, and enhance the city's role as an arts and cultural destination. It's important to note that these topic areas are not standalone. They are all linked to each other in various ways. And I will also reiterate that while this master plan will make recommendations across all these topic elements, there will continue to be a focus on equity, resilience, and climate protection as overarching principles and a lens through which the recommendations are implemented and evaluated. So I'll speak a little bit about the plan scope and timeline. This is the official public kickoff, so we're right there in November. Again, thank you all for attending this session. As I mentioned, this will be a year-long planning process, which again might seem long, but there'll be a lot to pack in as we move towards a completed vision and plan for the city. The circles on this timeline highlight major milestone stages of the planning process and the level of completion we expect to be at each stage. So we have already completed the kickoff and project initiation and the existing conditions. We have outlined key objectives with the city and a plan for an engagement strategy. We have also started to conduct some initial analysis on existing conditions and trends in Nashua that we will begin to share with you tonight. The next couple of months after today will be a big engagement push to gather feedback from all of you as we begin to craft a collective vision and prioritize goals across the various topic areas. And then the springtime will be heavily involved in what we call plan development, conducting further analysis to begin developing recommendations to achieve the goals that we have identified in January. And then we'll move on to plan implementation and plan approval that we are hoping to have completed by summer. So there'll be numerous opportunities for all of you throughout this year to be involved in this process. I'll briefly talk about some of this. It is a major goal of this plan to hear the voices of a wide spectrum of groups and individuals across the city to make this planning process as inclusive as possible. There'll be many opportunities, as I mentioned, to share your thoughts and input. Of course, right now, most of these engagement activities are planned to be online until we have a better understanding of where we stand in this pandemic. There will be 3 citywide public workshops discussing every major milestone of the plan. We are in the first one right now. Then we'll have 2 major public surveys, the first of which we'll be introducing tonight. The first survey will be gathering feedback from all of you in crafting an overarching vision for this plan and also goals that we want to prioritize. The second survey will be focused more on recommendations further on in the plan. We'll also be conducting a fun and interactive mapping activity that we can use together when as we think about future growth, redevelopment, and preservation in the city. And finally, there will be opportunity for more focused and targeted discussions, reaching out to various groups and neighborhoods. And hopefully we will actually meet each other in person at a local event sometime next year. Next slide. So similar to the timeline I showed before, this is a timeline showing the engagement process, highlighting the 3 citywide public workshops I mentioned after each milestone stage. And This timeline is also highlighting that throughout the year, there'll be many and various opportunities for everyone to continue to share input throughout the process. Next slide. So you might be asking how much of this will actually involve your time. And as much as we want you guys to give as much as time as you can, this is a summary of actually that you can participate in so many ways, from just a minute to sign up to receive email updates of where we are in the plan, 10 minutes to take today's survey, and then spreading the word to your friends and family. And then finally, the most time will take from you is an hour in each of the 3 public meetings, one of which you are here already right now, to engage with us and learn about where we are in the plan. Next slide. So now I'll be handing it over to my colleague, Will Cohen, who is an urban planner and the project manager of this planning process. He'll give an overview of where we are today and some existing conditions analysis we've started, as well as introducing the first public survey to you all. Thank you.
All right, hi there. Good evening, everybody. So, the primary focus of this meeting isn't going to be going through existing conditions in great detail. As you get a little bit further along, we'll have a lot further to show you, but we've got a lot to talk about today. So we're going to give you just a taste of some of the things that we've been looking at to date before we get into this first survey. One of the first things that we're really trying to remember is that while this is a comprehensive plan and a study that's focused on the city itself, Nashua does not stand alone and is part of the greater region. And there's been a lot of work done to date about this kind of stuff. There's recently a New Hampshire statewide analysis report done that looked at New Hampshire's role in the state relative to other cities, in some of its strengths and weaknesses relative to other cities. One of the big takeaways there is that relative to the other big cities in New Hampshire, and it was giving Concord and Manchester as examples there, the downtown of New Hampshire, of Nashua's sort of value per acre isn't as high as it is in other places. And so one sort of leading idea there is that a focus on the downtown might be a way to generate more sort of economic value without leading to some issues about sprawl, which are a concern for residents in Nashua. To that end, the first map I want to show you all is a very basic land use map. Land use in some ways explains everything, and in other ways it explains nothing, right? On every piece of property, there's a categorization of what's happening in that place, right? And the main categories are, residential, commercial. There's this idea of heavy commercial, which is things that are supposed to be commercial. They are businesses, but in some ways they feel more industrial than other offices. So an example of heavy commercial might be an auto body repair shop, or a gas station or a storage facility. Then there's industrial locations, and then the color blue represents municipal and institutional. These are businesses that don't pay taxes or don't pay local property taxes. Then finally, there's open and conservation space, and then transportation. So that's, those are very broad categories that combines all the different kinds of housing, all the different kinds of businesses. But even looking at that level of detail, you can already begin to see the patterns of development, right? Nashua, like many communities in the United States, is very, very residential with big neighborhoods. And there are concentrated strips of development where industrial, commercial, and heavy commercial uses are focused. This is going to be a really important tool for us as we work on the plan, because in many ways, land use is one of the big levers that the city has at its disposal to think about what the policies of the city should be. Along with the land use, what's happening on the ground right now, there's this idea of zoning, which are the rules that the city gets to use to encourage or discourage activities. There's already an existing zoning code in Nashua with all the different categories between residential, commercial, and all the different uses. There's overlay districts, which are rules that apply on top of sort of the base rules on the ground. And while this master plan is not a full zoning rewrite, recommendations from this plan will be useful in determining how the zoning code should change to achieve the goals that Imagine Nashua is setting out to have. There's a lot of other kinds of studies that have been done very recently as well, that touch on the different topic areas that we're going to be looking at. For example, housing affordability. Hot off the presses, there's a lot of new information that the city of Nashua has about affordability and the state of the housing market. This is just one piece that I thought was particularly useful, which splits out the sort of tiers of communities in terms of income, household income, relative to the kind of rent and home purchasing power that those residents have available to them, right? So if you are in sort of those upper bands of income in the city of Nashua, $100,000 plus or $75,000 to $100,000, that means that a household like that could afford rent of, $1,900 to $2,500 and up, or might be able to afford a house of $250,000 and up and up and up and up. That upper tier, represents about half of the households in the city, while middle income and lower income households still make up half of the city of Nashua, with those different target points of what would be affordable for rent or for buying a home. If you contrast that, what is doable with the levels of income that are available in the city or that are present in the city, there's also just what is actually happening right now, right? You can see that the median gross rent, that is to say, if you lined up all the apartments in the city of Nashua and picked the one right in the middle, the average rent of that apartment is about $1,287, which actually, means that that's smack in the middle of the middle income of households in the city. On the other hand, the median sales price, $320,000, and then up and up and up, that is only accessible to the highest percent or the highest band of income. So you can see right off the bat that home ownership versus having to rent is something which is very much a matter of socioeconomic stratification. Similarly, beyond just thinking about houses, the plan is very much about people, right? And when we think about demographics, one of the biggest changes that is happening right now, both in the United States and in Nashua, is a major generational shift. And so if you look at this chart, what you see is basically the different age categories of residents of the city of Nashua. So under 18, that's people who live in Nashua who are under the age of 18. Then there's 18 to 24, 25 to 34, 35 to 44, and so on, up to 65 plus. And what the chart is showing is the change in the relative percentage of those groups between 2019 and 2011. So what you can see is that between 2019 and 2011, 18 to 24-year-olds and 25 to 34-year-olds, that is to say millennials, have been moving into the city at a very high rate. And additionally, 55 to 64-year-olds and 65 plus, increasingly empty nesters, are making up a bigger and bigger percentage of the population. There's been, on the other hand, a big decrease in 45 to 54-year-olds and under 18. Part of the 45 to 54-year-old decrease isn't that a bunch of 45-year-olds are moving out, but in many cases that the 45 to 54-year-olds are aging up into the 55 to 64-year-olds and additional categories. So on the right side, there's a quote, which I think is important for ideas as we're thinking about this major generational shift, from a book that came out last year that is sort of a current book about planning practices. And I'll just read it really quickly. It says that the growing appreciation for urban lifestyles within, the groups of millennials and empty nesters, which constitutes a sizable majority of all households, is a long-term trend, not a short-term fad. And longer lifespans have reduced the dominance of that demographic mainstay, the household made up of, a married couple with a school-aged child or two, and likely a pet. Early in the 20th century, that description would have fit more than half of all households, and it now represents less than 25%, and by some accounts, less than a fifth of all households. That is to say, the house with 2.5 kids and a pet, a single family home in the suburbs of Nashua, made a lot of sense earlier in the century when half of all households or more were that size. But now with the increase of millennial households and empty nesters who are able to live in a smaller location, and in many cases, seeking lower price points for housing. As that demographic continues to grow, that's increasingly an issue which this master plan is going to need to deal with, because in many ways the housing stock present fit Nashua with its demographics from earlier in the 20th century, but now the change is happening, and it's happening relatively quickly. Additionally, an issue that we want to be talking about is sustainability, right? And Nashua has done a lot of work already to be thinking about these kinds of issues, right? There's been a lot more work to have solar installations in the last couple of years, which has been happening both on private and public properties. City vehicles are increasingly becoming electric. There's already 9 compressed natural gas buses, 2 hybrids. There's 2 hybrids owned by parking enforcement, and that number continues to rise. There's ongoing work to be thinking about electric vehicles and preparing for that. And the process continues. So issues related to solar generation, alternative fuels, and carbon mitigation are definitely going to be issues which the city continues to work on in the master plan. There's also economic issues, right? And there's a lot of work that we're going to be doing about the businesses that are currently in the community, what businesses are looking for, what other kinds of businesses we want to get. But right off the bat, we thought there are 2 maps that would be good just to kind of set the stage for what the big issues are. And so the first map that I'm showing you here is a map of where Nashua residents work. That means if you take all the people all the households who live in Nashua, and find where their workplaces are. In other words, the other end of that commute, this map represents that in terms of density. So, there's a healthy number of Nashua residents who also work in the city, right? The city of Nashua is lighting up pretty well there. Also, along the big highways, even, around the near parts of New Hampshire, it's available. But what's really key here is to see that network of where Nashua residents go is big, right? It's not just the city. It's up to Manchester, it's throughout the state, but it also extends heavily into the greater Boston metro area, not just along the highway headed right into the city, but also actually in Boston. There's a lot of it happening, over 128 in the corridor there, and Cambridge and Somerville and all that kind of stuff. So it is important for us to remember that while the master plan is able to think about what's happening within city borders, a lot of the idea of the economic story is tied to other communities. That said, we can look at the flip of it, right? If you work in Nashua, where do you live? And in many cases, this is a very different pattern, right? Many workers in Nashua live in Nashua, which is nice, the ability to choose where you live to shorten your commute. But similar to the other story, it's not just living in the city itself, right? That level of density fades out pretty dramatically for a long way. Not just to Manchester and the surrounding communities in New Hampshire, but again, also well into Massachusetts, whether it's Lowell, Haverhill, Lawrence, and actually further down. You've got people who live in, the inner Boston core who are still traveling to Nashua to work. There's also the idea of mobility and access, right? A big piece of this is not just about traffic, not just those maps I showed you before of people commuting on the highways, but all the other kinds of modes. Nashua's done a lot of work already. Your bike share program has, already 200 bikes. There's been tens of thousands of rides happening, and that number continues to grow. And as we continue to be thinking about a resilient way to be living, especially during this time of the pandemic, thinking about other modes and encouraging use of outdoor space is an important thing. And so we're going to be trying to look at all these different modes, whether it's walking, bicycles, public transit, the commuter rail, and of course, driving, to figure out ways to make all of these modes easier while also reducing dependence on the car. There's also a lot of work that's been going on in terms of complete streets. And, there's the bicycle and pedestrian project that the city is undertaking right now. In terms of open space and natural resources, a big effect of the first the 2000 master plan was to really work on the preservation and increasing the amount of protected open space, right? This is a phenomenal thing which which the city has achieved. I suspect that should continue to be a goal of the city, but also the increased use of the open space that's there, right? Nashua already has a robust park system. You've got a lot of parks. You have many, many acres of conservation land. But the next task is thinking, what are the best ways to continue to get the best use out of this resource, both in terms of conservation perspective and to the degree that it can be helpful for economic development, making it a better place to live, and combining with all of the other kinds of topic areas that we're looking at here. And the last, but very much not least, topic area of art and culture. This it's a big topic for many different reasons, right? And one important piece is that arts and culture isn't just a standalone one. In fact, in many cases, it's linked to a lot of the other topic areas that we've been talking about. More specifically to economic development, the two are very much complements of one another, right? Nashua has 3 theater companies. The state of Nashua hosts many, many events every single year. And in a recent arts report, for the state of Nashua, it's been found that over $4 million of non-event related spending has been added to the Nashua economy. That is to say, not the cost of tickets, not the cost of going to the theater or a concert, in addition to sort of the money that's going right to arts and culture organizations, sort of additional spending in the community has happened, to the tune of something like $4 million. Thinking about that, thinking about encouraging both artists and the smaller organizations to be able to find a place in the city, as well as increasing the ability to link that to sort of broader publicity and making it be a better place to live is going to be a focus of the plan. Okay, so that's a very high level overview of where we're beginning to look right now as we think about existing conditions, and the state of the city right now. In addition to sort of research and analysis and map making, another piece which we really, really need, and which we really, really need from all of you, starting tonight, is feedback on what we're getting right and what we should be thinking about as we come up with this vision. So normally, if it were not, 2020, where, due to COVID-19, it's hard to meet in person. Normally what we would be doing is immediately hitting the pavement, going to events all throughout the city, finding as many people in person to talk to as we can to sort of collect this information. That is hard to do right now, whether it's a combination of weather or the pandemic. And so what we want to do as much as possible, given all of this, is to find a way to encourage both getting good feedback that we can analyze, but also qualitative and nuanced information from all of you. And so we're going to try to start out a survey, which is available right now on the Imagine Nashua website. You can go to it right now on your phone or computer. And it looks like this thing here over on the left, right, where there's this little box that says, different statements. And here is, one of the statements which you start the conversation off with. I like the idea of increased density overall, but I do not want the density to impact my neighborhood. That, is a statement which you can either agree or disagree with, or if you're not sure, you can pass. At the beginning of this, we sort of seeded it with around 30 potential statements. We're up to about 40 because in addition to voting, whether you agree, you disagree, or you're not sure, underneath it, you can see it says share your perspective. So if a statement doesn't capture all of your opinion in terms of agreeing or disagreeing, or if you think you have a better version of it, or you think there are things which none of these statements are addressing at all, we absolutely want you to be sharing additional statements. What that means is that on the right side, there's a set of ongoing and live updating results, right? Earlier in the day before this meeting, a couple people had already voted, not so many, it was 15. We're now up to about 45 and counting. Everyone's voting on different statements, submitting additional statements, and you can already see that it begins to think about how they relate to one another. Some statements are things that everyone agrees with. Some are ones that are much more polarizing. And the discussion between those two will be helpful, not just for today's meeting, not just for the public meeting, but also for thinking about what we want, right? And so you can see right here that as of earlier today, this tool begins to split how everyone's thinking into different groups. Because the big piece about surveying is that we don't just want, some people to say yes and some people to say no. We want to see the different groups of stakeholders across the city and what they do or don't disagree with. So by both voting on the statements as you see them and creating new statements for people to be voting on, that'll help us get a much more sort of complete picture of what people think right now. So what we're going to do is, it's currently 6:45. We are going to switch it to sort of show everyone the survey and allow people to have those comments. After that, this process will continue once we stop talking about the survey, right? We're going to continue to work on existing conditions and the trend analysis. We're going to take feedback from the survey to come up with the draft vision and some goals. And you should all stay tuned for the public workshop, which we're going to be having in January. We'll talk about this right before the end of the meeting. But I just want to give you a heads up of that right now. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to switch from the presentation to a live version of the survey. So I hope can one person give me a thumbs up or in the chat or something so that you can see my screen real quick? Okay, wonderful.
We can see it. You're good.
Wonderful. So if you go to the Imagine Nashua website, you can do this on your computer, you can do this on a phone, you can do this on a tablet. We've switched it. So now right at the very top, there's this little box, right? And it has those comments. There's 40 of them and counting. You can just choose agree or disagree or pass or add your own statements. Underneath it, as you go, you'll start to see that there's already groups of what people agree or disagree with. You can see where you stand relative to other people. And you can also see for each group, A, B, or C, what are the statements that sort of categorize someone who's in C versus someone in B. That's kind of a high level overview. Much more interesting is this thing which we have up here, see the results so far. If you click that link, you'll have what's here over on my right side, which I'll refresh. It is the update of based on what everyone's been voting on the current state of things, right? At the moment, a total of 65 people have voted, but only 46 have voted enough that we can know exactly about them. The first thing which we get to see is how the statements are in terms of divisiveness, right? This one right here, I'm concerned that development will change the feel of my community, is the one which really separates the groups the most from one another. If you're in what it's calling right now, group A, that's been where 70% of them say yes to that, whereas B and C tend to be disagreeing. Although all the way on the most agreeing, we have ideas about adding new kinds of development, thinking about on-street parking, and thinking about what's going to be happening in the pandemic going forward. You also can see what are statements which everyone is agreeing with. This is going to be very important for us as we think about the goals and visioning, because statements which we can find consensus on across the board are going to be a really important piece for us to think about for planning tools. On the other hand, what we can also see is for the different groups as they're developing, what are the positions that tend to make those groups unique in terms of opinions. That's going to be the kind of thing which we're going to want to take a look at as we're thinking about visioning and goals, to see if there's aspects which can sort of deal with all the different groups that we're talking about together. So you can both vote on the comments, add new comments, and see what everyone else thinks right now. And with that, I think I will stop talking and turn it back over to sort of answer any questions that people have, or if anyone else from the city wants to say anything.
I just wanted to say thank you, Will. That was absolutely incredible information. I think for the first time for a lot of us seeing that in such an easy format. Thank you so much. We do have one quick question in the chat. I wanted to know if every vote was weighted equally.
That is a great question. So every vote is weighted equally, but not everyone sees comments in the same way. So what actually is happening is kind of like tests now which are computerized, where every person sees statements semi-randomly, and the questions which are shown first are to help immediately place where each person or where each sort of question should best be. That said, the votes all count equally. If a question gets a bunch of different passes and people aren't saying yes or no, then that suggests that a statement itself isn't very useful. And so it sort of falls to the wayside, but a vote is a vote. Everyone should only be voting once. It's set so if you're on your phone, if you reload the page, it'll still remember you. But if you it is true that if you were to load it on another phone, you would get to vote again. But we think it's more important to not require logins or something and allow anonymity than worry about people hacking it. I hope that there's not a bunch of residents of Nashua who are going to find as many smartphones as possible to try to juice the numbers. But if need be, there are ways to try to deal with it a little bit.
Awesome, thank you. Just as a reminder, now we are moving on to the question phase. Everyone's good to ask questions now? Perfect. So if you want to use the hand raised feature, give me 1 second to find that myself so I can tell you where it is. I forget where it is.
Hi, it's under the participants.
There you go, under participants.
Yep.
So if you click participants and then raise hand, and then we will see that and we can, two of you are quick. All right, let's see. Julie, are you able to see who raised their hand?
I am.
Perfect.
Yep.
Would you mind calling on someone?
Sure. We have, first we have Latha, and I'm sorry, I'm not going to be able to.
Latha Manjapudi.
Thank you. I knew I'd get the name wrong. I will unmute you so you can ask your question.
Hello. Thank you. This is a very informative, very exciting master plan session. And my question is, the first, when Mayor talked about the Daniel Webster College campus, we have two institutional campuses. One is the Rivier University and Daniel Webster campus, both great opportunity to not only use the land and make it a vibrant educational campus or campus period, but also renewable, sustainable wards. My dream is to see every ward in Nashua to be independent, energy independent with renewable energy across. So where would that fit in?
Do you want me to try that one, Amber? Great, thank you, Latha. So the area planning that the mayor was talking about, certainly the city doesn't own that property, but what we're looking to do is to do a bit of a deep dive and then to that to understand if we had the opportunity, what would be the best use for the community there? And how do we envision that? And how does that lay out? How does it affect the surrounding neighborhood? How does that play off of the airport and Amherst Street, right? And the direct access to Route 3. So that's the kind of idea there. And I think you added, or somebody added a very good question right into the survey saying that each ward should be energy independent. And that's a great way, if you have a question like that, to throw it right into the survey so that we can see how people feel. They agree, they disagree, and how we can move that forward in the rest of the plan. Great. If we're all set with that question, we can move on to Scott McCullough, I believe, has a question. Hold on, Scott. Trying to let you unmute here.
Yes, my question is transportation, housing, and would Nashua get affordable housing in the city of Nashua, because there's no affordable housing, and I use transportation, as Sarah knows this. I use cab companies, and cab companies are not cheap now. 5.5 is not cheap, and they tried to charge me $18, and I told them to bill Gateway, and that's not fair to tell me that I had to pay them $18 to come home from Five Guys restaurant on Amherst Street when I told them to build Gateway and they told me I had to pay $18. I might be leaving a little bit early.
Thank you, Scott. Yes, we're certainly going to be talking a lot about transportation and affordable housing as part of this conversation. And actually, the city just completed an affordable housing study, and that was presented to the Board of Aldermen last week. And we'll be having a bit more of a discussion about that on November 12th. You can check the city calendar if you're interested in learning more about that. But your ideas and opinions on how we can do this better and differently are greatly appreciated. Thank you.
Sarah, is that housing study available on the website? Is that something we can put a link to in the chat pod?
Yes, I'll throw that link up. Good idea, Julie.
Great, thank you. All right, so next I have a question from Peggy. Give me just a moment. Peggy, you should be able to unmute yourself.
How's that?
Perfect. Thank you.
Perfect. My family has been in Nashua since the Civil War. However, I'm the only one that's left here. Everybody has been driven out by property costs to Hudson, Litchfield, Milford, Merrimack, all the surrounding areas. I'd love to have one of them be a part of a conversation like this. Is this group restricted to people who are currently Nashua residents, or can it be broadened?
Sure. Yes, we would be very interested to hear from them as well. This survey, this plan, this project, this process is open to people who live, work, play in Nashua, or have, who have been part of the fabric of our community. So they would be more than welcome. I'm sure that some of them still shop, have jobs, drive through Nashua. And so all of that would be very much welcome. And please let others know that if they live, work, play, stay here, we would love their opinions.
Peggy, I also just put in the comment a link to where you can sign up for emails and provide comments. There's a link within there on the website. So feel free to share with your family members.
I will. Thank you.
Great. Next, I see a question from Alderman O'Brien.
Okay, hi. I heard from the presentation that part of the survey is going to be parking. And I think Director Marchand can say in coordination with Director Cummings that that's kind of a hot button issue right for now. So I'm just wondering how the two, your survey, and we're going to be conducting downtown parking survey. Are they going to commingle and, be able to give us an idea of the directions of where we're going to go with this?
Just to be clear, we're not doing a parking survey as part of it.
Okay, I thought
parking survey.
Okay, yes. I thought that was mentioned in the survey. I haven't seen the survey for this group yet. I haven't filtered out, but I thought that's what the other gentleman mentioned, that was going to be part of it as well too. So my mistake then. Thank you.
But you are correct, Alderman O'Brien. The city is working on a parking survey study, but COVID, with it being so many less people parking and driving, has put that on hold a little bit. But that is our big concern. There has been a survey question asked about allowing on-street parking in the winter, and so this is a agree, disagree. What does that make you feel? How does something like that work? That's what we'd like for feedback here in this process, but it won't be the actual, parking professionals giving us their feedback on our existing conditions of parking.
Outstanding. Very good. Thank you.
And we do have a hand up from Alderman Lopez. Hi, Alderman Lopez.
Hey, how's it going? So in terms of the scope of the project, we mentioned energy efficiency and land usage, and we also talked about green energy. Is it within the scope of master planning to look at amenities or resources that our city is likely to need as it grows, and maybe identify areas where that would be more ideally located? I know that with the Performing Arts Center, for example, they identified this area is where we would get the most benefit from having a performing arts center. And what I'm thinking is our city only has so much like surface area to turn into landfills at some point and then eventually turn into a golf course and drain for gas. We're going to have a solid waste issue. We already do really have one. So we don't really have any major recycling centers or environmentally focused businesses or resources. Those types of businesses should the public kind of be open to that as a concept and be looking in that direction. In the same way that we would say, well, if we add more people here, we're going to need a fire station here. If we add more people here, we're going to need a recycling center. Is that within the scope of this project? Is that something we can kind of source out to where that would look like it would fit well? What kind of things it would need, like access to a road?
I think those are great questions. I think the idea of what people be accepting of those is part of the scope of this. But just like the fire department has hired specialty consultants to help them understand the best locations for fire departments, there's a lot of detailed drill down information as far as specific locations, say for landfills or recycling centers or for things like that. So that would be too deep for this study. But you posed a really good question that would be great to throw up in Polis, as in, should we support these kinds of facilities in Nashua for our long-term sustainability? If you can put questions like that in there, then people can agree, disagree, and we can understand how we want to focus our time and energy and efforts in the future on that. And that would be part of the scope of this project.
Because just to clarify my understanding, we did in the past one do like general kind of like, over here, we would like to have more soccer fields and more recreational activity. So how does that kind of zoning, is that just we ask everybody what they're looking for and then say, would you like it here or here?
I think as part of this process, what we're going to understand is broad preferences for what's missing, what we love, and what we could do better, right? And those things will then be looked at in the context of what exists on the ground as far as development, transportation routes, environmental conditions, all of that together. And certainly the land use map that will come, the kind of future land use ideas map that will come out of this will have broad direction that this area would be great for these kinds of uses that the community has said is a priority. But it wouldn't necessarily be like this spot on 111, right? So it's a little bit higher level than that, but then that could be reflected in the zoning changes that will come about after this master plan.
Okay, I appreciate that. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention that my brother has asked repeatedly for a multi-dozen story Wizards Tower anywhere that you think would be appropriate. So
thank you.
Just putting it out there.
You should add that in the survey.
Put it in there.
See what people think.
Thank you.
I'm not seeing any more hands up at this time. So if there are any, Jean Porter, I see you're in your video, you have your hand up, so hold on just a second and I can unmute you. There you go.
Okay.
Jean. Yes, sir.
Sarah has done a wonderful job with the downtown waterfront development plan that sort of peters out towards the Merrimack River. Many cities have really taken advantage of their riverfront more than Nashua has or currently plans to. I think of Lowell. Now, we're not going to have a National Heritage Park here, but we've got some national heritage functions here, and we've got a lot of history, and we've got a wonderful riverfront that is not developed and is not being taken advantage of to increase the value of the city of Nashua. Now, part of the problem for that is, of course, the railroad. So I would hope that this planning function is going to look at the railroad and its impact on the city as things like commuter rail go forward, and what does that do to the downtown traffic pattern and what's needed for overpasses and so on. There's a lot of that kind of, I consider first order planning along the Merrimack River waterfront that I hope will be included in this project.
Thank you, Jean. We will note all of those. It would be awesome too if you could add into the survey the idea of focusing on the Merrimack riverfront, right? And so we can get some opinions about how people feel about that. This study is not going to be an in-depth transportation study that's going to study the rail corridor. That is in process. The state has put out an RFP for that as far as over and underpasses go. And the city, I'm sure, will be looking into that. As that comes out, that would be something we can piggyback off the future. But it would be great to add questions in there about the impact of that, as some of those things you just suggested as well, to see how the community feels about it.
I will do that if I can figure out how to get onto the website, which are.
I'll post a link in the chat box so you can get access to it.
Okay, Laura, I see a Laura has her hand up, so I'm gonna unmute you, Laura. There you go.
I couldn't figure out, sorry, I'm so bad at this. I couldn't figure out how to raise my hand other than actually raising it on the video. So my apologies.
It worked.
Yeah, it did. With regard to the riverfront and also in general in downtown, I feel like the homeless population, the veterans under the bridge, these things, the people with the mental health issues who congregate around Railroad Square. I'm wondering how that's going to figure into the plan, because I feel like in some ways these are people who need support. And I'm not sure we've found the best way to provide that for them. And I think it's held the city back in some ways because, I know certainly there have been times that I've taken family who are from out of town to visit there, and it makes it uncomfortable for them. Like when you're trying to walk along that river area and then you come across homeless people. I know that with one of my children's school, they were unable to use the land around Nashua Community College to practice cross country because the college didn't want to be responsible for the kids coming, anything that might happen between the homeless population that lives in the woods there and the kids using the property. And then also, not just talking about them, but how can we get them involved in this process? Because during this COVID time, it doesn't seem like they're going to have a lot of access to these computers and stuff. So how are they going to be involved in this process? Because I don't think necessarily someone like myself is going to have all the right ideas about how to help them, have a better life in Nashua so that we can all enjoy the community together in a healthy and safe way.
Those are some great big questions, Laura, and a good way for us to get started. As far as how do we try and involve them in this process, you're absolutely right. That's something that we're struggling with. We do have some focus groups that we will be going into next. I know we talked about that, and Greater Nashua Mental Health and many of our nonprofits that provide services to that community that you just talked about will be actively participating in this, and hopefully we'll give voice to that. We are going to, hopefully, as the spring comes around, as we get further into this, we're going to look for other ways to engage that aren't necessarily just digital, but we are somewhat limited in our ability to interact in person at this time. So we are open to ideas. And we are hoping that that there's going to be a lot of different ways that you can interact. And we were trying to pull in as many partners and groups as possible that will have these smaller discussions. And if you know some groups that we should be touching base with, please throw it in the chat or let us know. We will reach out to anybody and everybody. And I know we're working closely with the United Way. We're working closely with many different of our nonprofit organizations to try and reach some of these harder to reach populations.
All right, are there any other questions? I don't see anybody holding their hand up either on the screen or in the chat pod. I'm not sure if let's see. Oops, just reading the chat to see if there's anything over there. So not seeing any questions. I do see as a survey offered in different languages, and it's offered in Portuguese and Spanish in addition to English.
Well, actually, just
Lata
as
has a question.
a small follow-up about that, the website that we had is in Spanish and in Portuguese as well. So if you go to imagine.nashua.nh.gov, you can see it in English, Portuguese, and Spanish. The survey is a little bit different because the conversation, if we have speakers of different languages, that's sort of, we don't want to have a Spanish-only conversation relative to one in English. So actually, the way it's set up is if someone's phone or computer is set to a language that isn't English, what will happen is that when they go to the website, whether it's the English website, it doesn't really matter. If they go to the Imagine Nashua website, it'll detect that their phone is set to a different language and offer to translate imperfectly via Google Translate all of the comments into the non-English language. It'll detect basically what language the comment is in versus what language the sort of recipient's device is in. So if someone who doesn't speak English were to, go on their set to Spanish phone, they'll be able to see all these English comments that'll be Google translated into Spanish. Similarly, if they write a comment in Spanish, then anyone who's looking at it in English, they'll have the ability to see that that's a Spanish comment and it'll Google translate it back to English. So it's not perfect, but the idea is that it will allow at least multiple languages to be usable in the survey. So that's not just English and Portuguese, or it's not just Spanish and Portuguese. It's any language that Google Translate supports.
Great, thank you, Will. Sorry for that. Yes, the website and most of the materials are being translated into Portuguese, Spanish, and Swahili. And but as Will said, the survey, it all depends on what language your device is that you're taking the survey in, which is really pretty cool. Let's see. Oh, I
think Latha had a question.
Yeah. Okay, she's back. There we go.
I just, it's an important point in terms of diversity, inclusiveness, and it is not just exclusive for one population or the other. And I really love the idea of including every aspect, homeless, we have all spectrum. Everybody can be part of, and we have a great community with a lot of public arts and sculptures and murals and stuff, arts, and we are a great community in that way. And how do we leverage that? If I have a visitor coming in and people tell me, oh, well, let's go to Portsmouth or let's go to Concord, like why? We have a lot of art, and we have a great Central Park in Nashua, which is Mines Falls. Beautiful, and for all seasons. So how do we capitalize those kind of stuff? And so that's bringing back to my original conversation about Daniel Webster College, proximity to having a sports arena in terms of like cricket or where the community, the newer community, new immigrants can put up. My biggest dream would be to have a cricket stadium with a yoga center and integrative medicine and, retreat center like we have in Lenox, Kripalu Yoga Center. It would be a perfect thing to have it close to all the proximity. So how do we leverage those kind of stuff? We got to go to those groups. So I'll be happy to help in whatever way I can. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Latha. Let's see. There is a question in the chat asking if the plan is including all individuals that have special needs in our cultural diverse population, and asking if we've contacted Gateways Community Services for input. And Sarah, I believe you have, but I'll let you answer that.
Yes, we have contacted Gateway Community Services. They're part of our nonprofits. We've also we're also setting up focus groups with the Plus Company has offered to do that. So we have a group meeting already planned with the Plus Company. If there's other groups or organizations that we should be in touch with, again, please put them in the chat or send us an email. You can email imagine@nashuanh.gov. We will be Zooming and virtually meeting and emailing and calling all kinds of groups because we really would love their feedback. We are very interested in learning from more. And on the focus group side, we have some groups from a bunch of different cultures. We have an Islamic group that we are going to be interacting with. We have a Swahili group, hopefully. We have the Senior Center. And most of these will all be virtual again. We have the Interfaith Council. We have, a Portuguese Brazilian community group. We have, there's a lot that I'm not naming all of them right now. I'm really hoping that we're going to have a strong Spanish group. We have some awesome volunteers to help us pull that together. So our goal is to have focus groups and talk to them at least 3 times after each one of these meetings as well, to see if that we can be actively engaging with them. And hopefully they'll be actively engaging through the website all the time. But anybody else, we're happy to have your ideas and suggestions because it will only be as good as the people we can get involved.
Great. And there was a question about teens and children, and we are reaching out to through the high schools as well.
Yeah, that's a great question. We've reached out to all the PTO presidents and also through the private schools as well as the public schools to try and get some communication out. But if you know anybody, those are hard people to track down. I know I'm a parent and you have kids and you have 100 million things going on. So trying to get somebody to give us a 5 minutes or 10 minutes. So if you could please spread the word and push people to be like, hey, it doesn't take that long, fill this out, interact, that would be greatly appreciated.
Right. Anyone else have any questions? Jay, 40's question says it still used.
Jay's question, the answer is yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. And then for any other suggestions, whether you think it now or later, we all have that moment where we kick ourselves. We're like, oh, I should have asked this. Go on the imagine.nashuanh.gov site. That is your hub for all of this information. You will find information about when our next meetings are. You'll be able to take the poll there. You can email us. You can see recordings of the meetings and the presentation. So if you have that moment where you think, oh, I should have asked this question, or you think of a group that we can connect with or have a person, you can contact us right through that. Perfect. Thank you, Elizabeth. And that is the link right there. Laura, yes. I think we have to unmute you, Laura. One moment.
Hey,
there you
can
go.
you hear me?
Yes.
Good. Yeah, my husband tries to mute me all the time, but I refuse. Anyway, this is something that I've been trying to ask, and I don't think I'm asking it right. So I don't think it's getting the right answer. I keep asking the same question about this concept of health and human services, and I put it to Sarah Marchant earlier, and I tried to bring it up in the last meeting, and I guess what I'm thinking is there is so much that falls under that, and I see this arts and cultural thing there, and I think that's very important. But I think there's kind of a broader, there's these services that exist in our community that includes mental health, emergency services, parks and recreation, early childhood development, healthcare. All of these things do need a space, a physical land, in the physical landscape, and they need transportation access. And, a lot of these things are needed by people in more vulnerable populations. And where those people are located in relationship to these things is important. So I'm not really getting a sense that they, are being thought of cohesively in the plan. So I keep kind of saying, what about health and human services? But I'm trying to better clarify what I mean by that. And does that help? Or do you see where I'm headed with that, or why I'm concerned about that?
Yes, and yes, and yes. I do think that you have valid concerns. I think that this isn't necessarily the plan that's going to address all of those together. This isn't that one cohesive spot. That's not necessarily the purpose of it. I think we will look at many different things. I think that the public health and community services, their CHIP plan, the community health impact program, right? They have two different plans that I look at all the time and that are the basis of this. Those really kind of get to addressing that. But the idea of where services are located to where transportation is, right? And whether those services are parks and rec or education or healthcare, those are going to be brought into this plan, but they're going to be more through like the mobility and transportation. There isn't necessarily a health. We don't dive super deep into health at all, and we don't dive deep into education as part of master planning. So you are correct. Those are very important issues, and I do really truly hope that they permeate this plan, but they won't be in kind of their own bucket here.
And also, I just want to add that Betsy made a great comment that both hospital presidents have been on this Zoom call tonight. So folks that are engaging with those communities are definitely being talked to and involved throughout the way. So even if it's not the focus that we're addressing, they're still going to be involved.
Absolutely. Thank you, Elizabeth. It's 7:18. Does anybody have any other questions? We're okay with Tom Lopez. I see your hand raised.
Yeah, I just wanted to point it out just because some people may not be as familiar with some of the participants here, but there's actually pretty good participation. I can see several outreach workers. I can see members of the faith community. I can see public health representatives. This group has a lot of people who do direct service with unsheltered homeless, sheltered homeless, special populations, minority populations. There's a pretty good sampling here, actually.
Thank you.
Plus, social workers, we like to talk to each other, so word will get out by tomorrow anyway.
Thank you, Tom. Does anybody else have anything to say? Mr. Mayor, do you have anything you want to say to wrap us up? Or Sarah, Julie, anyone from UTL?
I guess I'll end it here by saying thank you all so much for joining us on this kickoff, and please help spread the word. Tell your friends, your family, people you work with.
Sorry.
Oh, great.
Sarah.
And then I will hand it back over to the mayor.
I was having a little trouble getting back on. Well, thank you all for your participation. There are many issues that we need to consider, and we want to involve as many people as we possibly can in the effort to just make Nashua an even greater community. So thank you to Sarah and our staff. Thank you to UTILE. And of course, Amber and our Citizens Committee. Thank you for participating and helping us with this effort. So we look forward to the next steps.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mayor. And as Sarah was saying, and I did see one question that had asked, how do we tell people? Yes, share the link. You can share it on all of your social media, in your emails, in your text message, in your phone calls. Anyway, if you want to print it out and post it in your community billboards in and around your workplace, if you're still going into the office, please feel free to do that as well. And that's it. Thank you so much.
Actually,
everyone.
Amber, one moment.
Yeah.
I think Director Bagley had a question that she
yeah.
wanted to ask, and we weren't able to get to that. So I didn't, Bobby, I just unmuted you.
Oh, thank you. I was just going to say, someone mentioned about the Health and Human Services components of the plan not maybe seeming like it's apparent, but when you're addressing all the things that are in the plan, those are components of the social determinants of health. And so those are addressing those aspects that impact where we live, where we pray, where we work, and where we play. And so those are components that help maintain and build resiliency for our health and our well-being. So I just wanted to add that piece in there. So it may not have quote unquote health, but the things that are addressed in the Imagine Nashua plan will impact and benefit improving health and well-being for all the citizens, especially because it has that equity layer in there. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Bagley. As a reminder, come Monday, all of this will be posted on the website, both this video recording of this meeting as well as the slideshow presentation separately. Sarah, do they have permission that if there's a piece of the slideshow that really speaks to them and their community that they would like to share and invite people to be a part of that, they could do that?
Absolutely. And if you need something smaller, if that's a big download, please just hit that imagine@nashuanh.gov and either Julie, Matt, or I will get back to you. And we have flyers and other things that we can post as well. So we're more than happy to send this out.
Wonderful. Awesome. Thank you so much, everyone. We are thrilled and excited to kick this meeting off and look forward to all of your input on the survey and hopefully to see you again soon. Thanks so much.
Thanks so much.
Have a good night, everyone.